Okay, so I'm sure most of you know us by now. My name is Nadine, and I'm the Academic Director in ATC Language Schools. I'd like to introduce you today to my colleague, Joanne Mitten. Joanne has worked with ATC Language School since 2009. She's worked in many different roles. She's worked as a teacher and a teacher trainer, as a materials writer, a course developer. She also works in a more non-academic role. She works in human resources. She looks after quality assurance, and she is the academic director of our summer programs. So today, Joanne is going to talk to you about managing a writing team. So that's a team of people in your organization who collaborate together in order to write materials and indeed to develop courses. So Joanne is going to bring her considerable project management skills to this webinar today and offer you some practical tips and advice on how to best coordinate and manage a good writing team and work on such an important project in our organizations. So before we start today, as always, I would just like to remind you, if you have any questions for Joanne, please put them in the Q&A box at the end of your screen. Please wait until the end of the presentation to ask questions, because Joanne will not be able to stop delivering the presentation to answer questions. So any questions you have for her, put them in the Q&A box and Joanne will endeavour to answer them for you at the end of her presentation. Okay, so I'll hand you over now. Enjoy this webinar, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadine, and thank you to everyone who has joined us this morning. I see lots of familiar faces, which is great to see lots of returning people to these webinars. So as Nadine said, today I'm going to talk about managing a writing team. And my aims are to think about project management in the context of materials writing, and also to give you some practical tips on how to complete large writing projects. So first of all, like last week, I want to introduce you to key players in product development and writing. So if any of you have ever written a course or been involved in materials writing in the past, you probably recognize the steps, recognize that everything comes from a concept. It usually comes from an idea, most of the time from the sales team, sometimes from the students. And it goes through a process of a concept of, this is the type of thing we'd love to deliver. This is the type of thing that we'd really like to put in our suite of courses. And then it needs to go through steps with the academic team to actually make it happen and make it come alive. And some of the key players in this in ATC are Sylvia Greavy, who is our sales manager, and she particularly looks after our Italian clients. And then we have Nadine Early, who you know very well from our webinars. We have Aoife McLaughlin, who's our Director of Studies in Bray. And we have Alison Banks, who's our Director of Studies in Dublin. And currently, these guys are the driving force behind what is written and what's delivered at the moment, particularly with our online courses. And you'll see as I go through today's webinar that being thrown into a crisis has resulted in all sorts of new products and new courses. And what we find in ATC is that it's a combination of sales and marketing coming back with feedback from clients and then going through the academic department to really ensure that this is something that will work and something that is written well. And we have lots of senior teachers involved in writing as well. Unfortunately, I don't have pictures of them, but we have Bridget Costigan, who has been a teacher with ATC for many years, and she writes lots of materials for us. And we also have Wendy, who is one of our teachers in Bray, who's also been with us for many years. And she has been involved in writing a huge number of really interesting, different courses, really moving away from the idea of general English into all sorts of English and other subjects. So English and journalism, English and marketing, those types of things. So I wanted to introduce you to some people behind our products and behind the writing before diving into today's session. So first of all, why do we write new courses? There can be many reasons why we decide we need a new suite of courses or a course needs to be updated. And as I mentioned before, it can come from marketing, it can come from the sales team, it can come from their research, what their clients are telling them they want, or what they're seeing on the ground when they are traveling. What is it that students are looking for or agents are looking for? But it can also come from students themselves. So sometimes we need to pivot to the changing needs of students. This year, or the last 12 to 14 months, we had to pivot to the changing needs of the entire world. Often, if you're doing it right, you're updating your methodology. So you might be moving from very paper-based or perhaps very teacher-led to more interactive or student-centered. So often you need to change a course or update a course to improve your methodology or to have a shift in methodology within your school. You may want to convert your face-to-face courses to online courses, and I think every school in the world has done that this year. It's no mean feat. It's a very labor-intensive thing to do. And as I said, sales and marketing may come to you with a demand for new products. So a shift in focus for high school or middle school students, for example, or a shift in focus in the teacher training market. So there are all these factors that feed into why we need to write new courses and why we have to update the courses that we already have. And it's fantastic, you sit down and you brainstorm all these ideas, and everybody has a different idea and everybody has a course that they want on the list that they want to get up on the website. And if you're in a big organization, you can have lots of people with lots of different aims and goals and agendas. And if you're in a big school, you could have a suite of junior short courses, that's 1 or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. You could have adult, medium and long courses. So these are usually off-season, year-round. They can be language courses or they can be skills courses like project management and English or business English. You may have exam courses. And as we know, we have a huge number of exams that students like to take around the world, from TOEIC to Cambridge exams to IELTS exams to language cert. You could spend your entire time writing exam courses to promote. And of course, teacher training courses are in huge demand at the moment, and these change all the time. So from year to year, you have different trends in teaching or different needs in teaching. So over the past year, teachers really wanted to learn more about online teaching, about how to utilize online tools when they're delivering their classes over platforms. In years gone by, in the past couple of years, we've had an uptake in subjects such as Clil, and that's coming back into demand again. So you really need your ear to the ground. But it's so overwhelming because there's so much happening and there's so many courses that people want. So where do you start? How do you even begin to start writing courses? So the one thing I would like you to take from this, and I'm going to repeat this a few times in the webinar, is always start at the end point. Visualize what you want from your course. How do you want it to look? What do you want the students to get from it? And how do you imagine it being delivered? And if you start at that end point, then it's kind of easier to slot everything else into place. But then it's all the things that you have to slot into place that's really difficult. So you need to think about the content, the methodology, the delivery, the design. What's it going to look like? How are you going to deliver it? Is it going to be paper free? Is it going to be through a learner management system or an online system? How is it going to work and how's it going to look? And I speak from experience here, and I'm sure if anyone else here has written course material, you will identify with this. The temptation is to sit down and get all your ideas out and plow through it, and you've got all these great ideas and you really want to make this course look and feel the way you know it will be its best. But you've also got budget to consider, so you need, don't forget that you've got somebody in the background who needs to know how this is going to take, and they also need to know, is it going to be printed? Is it going to cost to deliver? How much is training for teachers going to cost? So you need to keep that in mind. And the main thing that you need to do before you start anything, before you put pen to paper, you need to identify and involve all your stakeholders. So who are your stakeholders when you're writing a course, when you're completing or developing a new course? First of all, you have your students. So using student feedback is really important, whether they're adults or juniors, getting feedback from about what they want, what they feel is working, what they feel isn't working. That's a huge part of what you're about to develop. You also need to listen to your teachers, and then you need to listen to sales and marketing, the agents, and your school owners. So before you put a plan together, before you do anything, you need to either meet with these people, and if it's students, maybe have a student forum, or at the very least have some sort of feedback, some way of listening to the students and listening to what they're interested in. And you need to build on that feedback, build on that information to then shape what you're going to develop. I'll go into this in a bit more detail in the latter half of this webinar to give you some examples of why it's so important to listen to agents or to listen to your sales and marketing team, for example. So once you have an idea of what people are looking for and what might work, then it's time to dive in, to really get stuck into the nitty-gritty of your course development. And something that I kind of was involved in 2017 was a complete overhaul of our junior summer syllabus. So this is our syllabus out in our summer centres. And one of the most difficult parts of overhauling that syllabus was the nerve or the risk taking to clear the slate. Okay, so if you have to start from scratch to get the best outcome, do it. So for example, if you have a teacher training course, maybe for example, in Ireland, we have a state qualified teacher training course. And if you have a teacher training course that needs to be updated, and as you go into it and as you go through it, you realize, oh, you know, this really needs to be updated. I really need to change this quite a bit. Bite the bullet. If you have to start from scratch and look at it in a completely different way, the earlier you do that, the better. It's very difficult and it's very tempting to tag things on and to build on what you have, but sometimes you have to just start again. Obviously, the content is there, the theory is there, and the tasks are there, but you may be going from a very paper-based course to something completely digital. And that could be, you know, a really good decision in your planning, where you think, do you know what? I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to go completely digital or completely paper-free with this. I'm going to start from scratch. And that also frees you up and helps you clarify the path or clear the way for new ideas. And clarity is really important. So you need to have a vision. What do you want from the end of this course? What do you want your students to get from it? How do you want it to be delivered? And how do you want it to be talked about and reviewed? What sort of positive things do you want people to say about the course when they finish the course? And as I mentioned before, involve as many stakeholders as you can, because they'll give you a really good overview of what will work. I'll give you an example of this. In our face-to-face summer courses, we are located in 8 different schools across Ireland. And those 8 different schools have different facilities. Some are completely decked out with technology. So they have interactive whiteboards, they have PCs in the classroom, they have everything you need to deliver a paper-free course. However, other schools are much more traditional. We're there for a month, we're there in July, and when we are teaching in those schools, we don't have access to a huge amount of technology. So it was very important that the writing team in 2017 knew this, and they knew the limitations and the varied facilities in the different summer centres. And therefore, they wrote a syllabus that could be used either paper-free or with handouts and with paper. So it's really important to involve everybody so that you're creating something that actually works. You need to be really honest with yourself, and you need to be ready to take honest feedback from teachers and from other academic managers. You need to listen to people. I have their centre managers. So for example, in our summer centres, we have centre managers who organise students to go out on trips after class. And sometimes it can be a struggle to get students involved in those trips after class. So when we were developing a syllabus and a whole new programme for our summer centres in 2017, we really had to listen to our academic managers and our centre managers to make sure we created something that really fit the entire programme. And listen to people when they're telling you what doesn't work. And that will give you a really good idea of what you can put in place that will be really beneficial to your students, to your teachers, to your activity leaders. And then you need to put together a writing team. So if you're doing a big project, you know, a serious project where you're either overhauling a syllabus or changing a face-to-face syllabus to an online syllabus, or you're writing teacher training courses from scratch, anything that's big and meaty, you need to put a writing team together. And that writing team need a clear brief. They also need a model. What do you want the lessons or the training to look like? They need an actual model they can follow. And something that can be very easily overlooked, they need formatting guidelines. So what font are you going to use? What size will the font be? What templates should the writing team use? And what way should things look on the page? Do you have a vision of how you want your materials to look? Because, of course, the content of the course is very important and the methodology, but you also want your materials to look good and to look like something that is really presentable, that looks good on screen or looks good printed out. So, when you're thinking about design and formatting, this is one of the really important parts of your writing team. There's a few things that you need to think about. And again, it's going to that end point and thinking about, what do I want my end product to look like? You also don't want to spend all your time reformatting someone else's work. So if you're using PowerPoint, are you going to give your team a template? Are you going to give them a color scheme? Are you going to give them logos? And what I would suggest is, if they're going down the road of PowerPoint or handouts or booklets, it's a good idea to get everything together into a either Google Drive folder or another accessible folder where everything is there for them, and they have templates and they have color schemes, they have all the information they need, and they know that if I'm following what's in this folder, I am doing well with the design and the formatting and the templates. The font size and style is really important, particularly when you're taking your dyslexic students into account. So if you're using handouts or booklets or PowerPoints, making sure that all the font sizes are above 32, and also making sure that the font is easy to read, so that it's Calibri or Comic Sans or another font that is accessible for anybody who has difficulty with text on screen or on paper. The teacher notes and their format need to be very clear, and it's a good idea that all the teacher notes are presented in the same way. They may need to have the same structure, so that if you're running a huge operation like ATC runs in our summer centres, if you go to the college in Blackrock, you see that the teacher notes are the same for the A2 class in Blackrock as if you went over to UCD and you opened up the teacher book for C1. The format and the layout and the structure of the teacher notes is the same. So teachers can move between colleges or move between levels, and there isn't a huge difference in the material, the way the material looks or the way the material is laid out. There's a good standard, a kind of a standardized format. And then the student documents and their format, they need to look professional. They should be well laid out, proofread, obviously checked for typos. And this is a huge thing. This is a huge job for somebody to go through the work that someone else has done and make sure that everything is where it should be and that typos are caught and everything is looking nice and standardized. So what's happening here is suddenly you find yourself switching your mindset. So you go from maybe being an academic manager or a senior teacher where you're used to writing your own materials and creating your own classroom materials. Suddenly you have to shift into project manager mode. And that's actually really difficult. And for a lot of people in education and a lot of people in English language education, it happens without much training, and it happens kind of overnight, and you realize I need to project manage here, and I need to try and manage a team and get a team to all do the same thing and all work towards the same goal. And if you're also managing a school or possibly teaching yourself or working on other projects, that is a huge thing to take on. So it's important to have some basic project management skills under your belt to undertake this. And I say this because when I took on my first big writing role in ATC, I had management skills, but I don't think I had project management skills. And I kind of learned them, and some of them I wished I had. When I got to the end point, I saw some things that I learned along the way, and I really wished I had them at the beginning. It would have made my life a lot easier. So you're shifting your mindset from maybe working as an individual, writing courses as an individual, to suddenly managing a writing team. And you've suddenly found yourself in the role of project manager. So this is where you're leading the work of a team to achieve goals and meet success criteria. And you're trying to achieve all these things with certain constraints. So with whether you're writing a whole syllabus for summer centres or whether you're changing your syllabus from offline to online, there are going to be limits to what you can do. So not only are you managing the people who are writing for you, you're also trying to do this with possibly a small budget or limitations on how the course can be delivered. So you need to keep in mind, you may have these great ideas of how the course will look or how it will be delivered, but then you have to remember, okay, we don't actually have that facility in that particular school, or remember, how am I going to get the materials to the students? So you have to keep those constraints in your mind at all times, and also make sure that other people have them in their mind at all times. So some tips if you have never managed a project before. Again, I'll repeat this, start at the end. So have your vision. What do you want it to look like? How do you want it to be delivered? And make sure everyone on your team understands and can also visualize that end point. If your end point is fuzzy, if you don't know it, or if you know it, but you can't really show it to your team or get your team to visualize it, then you're going to find that you get sort of your scope gets a little bit hazy and things start to go in the wrong direction. Then you have to spend a lot of time and energy getting everything back on track. And that can be very stressful, particularly if you have a deadline coming up. So visualize your end product and your goal, but make sure that everybody around you also knows the end product and the goal. And perfectionism is the enemy. So sometimes you do need to move on from something that you're working on. It's very, very difficult to get everything absolutely perfect. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you can overcome this later in the session. But if you are spending the start to the middle of your project obsessing over tiny details, you're going to run out of time. You may kind of lose track of your end point, or you may lose track of your overall picture. So try not to be too much of a perfectionist, particularly at the beginning and in the middle of your project. And then your time management is key. So I'm going to show you something you can use, which is really helpful for time management in a big writing project. So this is a very simple example of a Gantt chart, okay? So this will really help with your time management. And this is an example of a Gantt chart that I used during the huge writing project of 2017, where we had to write 4 weeks of 5 different levels. So in total, it was about 200 individual lesson plans with student material and teacher notes. And we had from January to March to kind of write this, because then in April we had to review it and format it. Then in May it had to go to the printers, and then in June our summer centres opened. So everything had to be tracked quite closely. Now on paper it looks very clear, and I can tell you that we definitely had deadline creep. It never really goes the way you expect it to, or the way you've nicely color coded it on paper, but having a visual of what should be done week by week really helps when you're dealing with a large team of writers. So I had 4 teachers helping me, and I also had Alison and Aoife come in to really give support as well, and they took on lots of levels to help us get over the line. And as you can see, you've got your dates and you've got your target of what should be completed by each date, and you should know what everybody is working on week to week. And you should also be slotting in meetings. So here we have moderation meetings where we have the teachers meeting together and comparing. So we have, for example, teacher 1 was working on B1 week 3 and teacher 2 was working on B1 week 4. In their moderation meeting, they should be looking at their B1 materials and making sure that they're getting the level right. And they may also be bringing in teacher 3 and teacher 4 to have a look as well, to give them an idea of, do we feel we're on track here with the level of these tasks and the challenge that we're giving these students. And you're also reassessing in those moderation meetings, you're reassessing your methodology. You're also reminding yourself of the limitations of the syllabus, reminding yourself we're going book free, so make sure that you're you're not incorporating any activities from any books, making sure that you are incorporating live listening, plenty of interaction, plenty of role play and drama. So it's a good way to get everybody together to keep the brief fresh in your mind. And then you're collating as you go along. So the project manager should be collating material and have a good idea of where that material is going to be accessed, where it's going to be stored, how it's going to look. So when you have a large project like this, 200 lesson plans, you really, at the beginning of the project, you really need the end point of the project in your mind. You have to imagine, how are my teachers going to use this? Because it would be very easy, and I would definitely be guilty of this, of diving in, writing away, and then getting to the end point and realizing there's a weak link, and I didn't think of this particular thing, or I didn't think of how my students would access this material. So it's really important to always keep that in mind as you go along. So the communication is really important, and now it's actually easier than it was before. Before, when we had big writing teams working on something such as the project in 2017, we all felt we needed to be in a room together, which is quite difficult because we have two different schools. Whereas now everybody is so used to Zoom and meeting online, it's actually a lot easier. And Nadine, who heads up most of the writing projects now for our online courses, can meet us all in Zoom, can screen share, can keep everybody ticking along. And it's actually, I find, a lot easier doing things that way. So it's really important that you have your regular meetings, that you review your planning, get your Gantt chart out, see where you are. Are you behind? Do you need to maybe get someone else on board, get an extra person on board to get you up to where you should be? Comparison, so getting teachers to sit together and compare their materials. Is the standardization looking good, or is the design looking good on everybody's materials? And importantly, do they work? So you might want to test your materials out. Go through your materials with another teacher to make sure that the order makes sense, or that the structure of the lesson makes sense, or that the tasks make sense and they are as interactive or as communicative as you hope they would be. So that communication is one of the hardest things to do when you're in the middle of lots of other projects as well. So in our big syllabus overhaul of 2017, there was a whole school running at the same time with 350 students happening at the same time as this massive project. So one of the things I learned was that I needed to make more time for communication and for standardization. At the beginning of the project, those things were slipping a little bit, and we were all stuck in our planning and our writing. And then when we compared, we realized we're a little bit off track here. We need to tidy this up, and we need to be more standardized. So don't let those planning meetings and those standardization meetings slip, because they will save you a lot of time in the long run. So what are you standardizing? What do you talk about when you sit down to standardize your materials with your team? It's so easy when you write something on your own, because it's just you involved and you have your vision and you don't have to verbalize it to somebody else. You know what you're working towards. But if you have a team of 4 or 5 writers, you need to make sure that your levels are correct and that you're all working on the same sort of CEFR guidelines. And that's really important, because if you have somebody who's pitching their A2 far too high, your students come in and they complete that A2 course, then they move up to B1. You have a massive problem on your hands, not just from your client's point of view, but also from an inspectorate point of view and from a standards point of view. So the first thing you need to focus on are your levels, and make sure that you have a team that truly understands the CEFR and they understand the tasks that should be included in each of the levels. You should be agreed on your methodology, and this is where a model comes into play. So if you have a particular type of methodology that you want to be reflected in all your lessons for a particular course, then you should give a model to show them how that methodology can come through in a lesson plan. And in our summer lesson plans, we actually included a lot of teacher notes. So in our summer schools, we would have lots of teachers. We might have 30 teachers in one school. In a big school, then we might have 15 teachers in a medium school, and we might have 5 teachers in a small school. So it was very important to us to have very clear teacher notes that even suggested when you could do pronunciation work, or when you could do group work, or when you could do a mingle activity. So that was really important for us, that we were all on the same page about how the methodology came through in the teaching materials. Looking at tasks, particularly making sure that you have a good balance of tasks, so that in every lesson you have a nice mixture of communicative pair work, group work, problem solving, a little bit of reading and a little bit of writing, but that no particular type of task takes over the lesson. Then, of course, making sure your materials and the design of your materials is standardized and looks the same. And that the delivery of your course is standardized. So, for example, with our online courses, and Nadine has been instrumental in getting all our online courses written and the materials out to teachers, it was really important that the material was written with the delivery in mind, that these online courses weren't like webinars, like you're watching me do now. They were interactive. There was lots of breakout rooms. There's lots of chat between students. There's project work. There's presentations. So making sure that everybody on your team has that delivery in mind, that they know that this is how the course should be delivered or should feel to the student. And remember, I talked about not being a perfectionist. So you really need to get that urge to do everything perfectly from the beginning out of your mind. Because what you can do is pilot your materials. So many times with English language schools, courses start small and you get some bookings. You might start in January with 1 or 2 groups, and it's small and manageable. And this is where you can pilot the materials you've written so far. And one of the tips I would give is that you should have your writing team teach the materials. So the teachers who have written these materials then go into the class and actually deliver them. And that kind of helps in 2 ways, because if there's a glitch in the material, you're not going to have panic, because the person delivering the material has written it. So they're not going to panic, and they're not going to say, well, this doesn't work at all, throw all the paper in the air. They're going to say, okay, there's a glitch there, and then they can tweak it, they can edit it, they can proofread it, they can add a teacher note, they can clarify, and then that lesson that they've just taught is now perfected, and now it's ready to hand on to somebody else. This is one of the things, one of the biggest things I learned from writing material is having the writers teach it, because it really works. It really helps with tweaking the material. It really helps with standardization. And you also have somebody confident at the front who will be able to improvise or will be able to fix it on the spot if they come across an issue. Whereas if you're handing that material to someone who's never seen it before and there's an error, that's very difficult for that teacher to kind of work through, because it's not their material. So before you hand anything over to a new teacher or a teacher who hasn't seen the material before, it needs to be very clear. It needs to have very good teacher notes, and you should have piloted it. You should have done a test run to make sure that it works. And in any new course, particularly if you're going down a new route, different types of materials or a different type of delivery or a new methodology or a combination of different methodologies, you need to train up your teachers as well. So you need to factor that into your writing Gantt chart. You need to give time to train your teachers into how to deliver this new material, and to allow the teachers to understand the vision of what the material should achieve, or how the students should react to it and how they should engage with it. Really clear training of your teachers means that you're going to really get the most out of your material. Having teachers on your writing team is a really important part of developing a new course, because they know what works in a class. They're with students all the time. They're getting new ideas all the time. But then obviously you're going to have teachers as well as your writing team deliver that material. So training and support for those teachers it should be seen as part of the writing of your material. So I'm going to give you an overview of some tips, and some of these I really wish I'd known when I started really in a big project in 2017. I wish I'd known these at the beginning, but I kind of learned along the way, and it was fine. You know, we got there. But had I known a lot of these things, I think I would have got there maybe with a lot less stress. So first of all, moderate your submissions regularly. So if you have a team of 4 or 5 people working away, make sure you're having a look at what they're submitting. What are they writing? Are they on brief? Is the formatting correct? And are the levels standardized? And the easiest way to do that is with your moderation meetings. Make sure you have a timeline and track your progress. Reprioritize. You may have your priorities in order, but you might find you have to reprioritize. You might need to amend your timeline. You may find that you've kind of gone off track a little bit. You need to keep back on track. So your timeline is a really good visual help to keep you on the right track. Remember to test your material, pilot it, take feedback, adjust it if you need to, roll out again on a bigger scale. Keep in mind the school facilities. So if this is a syllabus that is going to be delivered face-to-face in a school, what are the facilities in that particular school? Think about your learner needs. Think about your accreditation bodies. So don't forget your learning outcomes, your variety of tasks and skills, and also the budget. The budget always has to be in the back of your mind. You can't go over your deadline. You can't have too many writers. You can't have something that's going to cost a fortune to produce, like to print. And then train. So train your principals, train your teachers, train your activity leaders if they're involved in any of the materials you develop. And you also need to train your learners. So we found in ATC that our learners needed a little bit of training with how to engage in online lessons. And these are just small things like how to use the chat box, how to properly engage when they're in breakout rooms. But you do need to have some sort of training for your learners to make sure they're getting the most out of your new course that you're developing. So now I just want to briefly show you what we've developed over the years in ATC. And all these things were developed through writing teams. So it's not just one person at a computer, it's usually a team of a few people working together. So the newest things that we've developed are teacher training and development programs. And as you can see, there's a huge array of different types of teacher training programs. And these are a combination of online part-time programs and full-time face-to-face programs. So as you can imagine, material needs to be specific and needs to be suitable for those 2 different scenarios, okay? And this project is headed up by Nadine Early. So she has developed our teacher training and development program. Then we have our online summer camps, and this is just a taster. We have lots of other courses as well, but we have primary courses and we have secondary courses, and we've all sorts of things from Discover French, Introducing Spanish, STEAM, which I spoke to you about before, creative writing, digital identities, journalism, and filmmaking and screenwriting. So these are for students who are either native English speakers or bilingual speakers. But then we also have other online camps, general English or introduction to English, journalism and English together, digital identities with English. So we have lots of different things that we've developed, and these have all been developed through team writing. So this is a sample of our online summer camps, but many of these came out of our year-round online junior programs. And this project was, again, overseen by Nadine Early, and she tasked me, Aoife McLaughlin, and Alison Banks with specific courses that we worked on. We were working on them from around October to January, and then we delivered them ourselves. So we were the main teachers in January when it was a little bit quieter. That gave us the opportunity to tweak those courses, make sure they were really the best they could be. And then we were able to hand those courses with comprehensive training over to teachers once we knew, okay, these are really working. And then as we move towards the summer, we've narrowed down the courses that are really popular, that really work, and we're offering a selection of those courses as our online summer camps. So that's the most recent development, and Nadine, Aoife and Alison have really been at the forefront of developing those. But a lot of the ideas have come from our marketing team, specifically Sylvia Greavy, who comes back with all these ideas that she gets from her clients. And she, you know, she's really good at driving ideas, and then it goes into the hands of the academic team who create it and make it happen. And this is just an overview of what I have been talking about, the complete overhaul of our summer syllabus. Now, this is our summer syllabus when we're face-to-face, pre-COVID, when we have hundreds of students coming over to visit us in the summer. So as you can see, it's an array of different topics every day. And remember that we wrote this syllabus, but for every single level. So there's about 200 lesson plans that were written in that project. So that was quite a big project with a big team behind it. And a closer look, this is again, a closer look at our summer syllabus when we're face-to-face. Every lesson plan has a lot of detail. It has projectable diagrams. So if you happen to be in a school with lots of IT equipment you can use, you don't need to print anything, you can project it. However, if you're in a school that's a little bit more traditional in the summer, you can print the handouts and give them out to the students. We also developed the learning journal, and this is what I was alluding to when I was talking about our centre managers and our activity leaders, getting students out on tours and trying to get them to lift their heads up from their phone to actually engage in the tours. So we created the learning journal to really help the students engage with what they were seeing. So they had little tasks, questions to answer, treasure hunts, and they could also make their own notes at the back of the journal. And it's something that they can then take home to their family or their friends and show them what they did while they were in Ireland. What did they do? What did they see? So the learning journal was also introduced in around 2018 to complement the 2017 syllabus and to really get students involved in their tours. And again, this takes training. We had to train our activity leaders and we had to train our centre managers, but we also had to train our students on how to use it and how to get the best from it. So that's a very brief overview of what we've developed so far and how we manage our writing teams. And hopefully you've gained some tips or maybe some inspiration if you're going to write some new courses. But it would be great if you kept in contact with us. So feel free to send us an email at info@atcireland.ie if you're interested in any of our summer courses, teacher training or junior or adult English courses. Everything I talk about here, all the webinars and signing up for future webinars are available on eltconnect.com, and all our courses are available on ATC Language Schools as well. So thank you very much. That was longer than I thought it would be.
Thanks, Joanne. That was great. That was really interesting, as always.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's, as Joanne said, it's certainly it's a huge endeavor to you know, completely rehaul all your courses, overhaul, should I say, all your courses and start from scratch. But it's a huge learning curve, and you learn, as Joanne said, so much along the way, and to be able to step back at the end and look back on it with such great insight is really helpful. So I hope people took something away from this today, because you know, it's such a big endeavor. So thank you for your insights, Joanne. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the academic team. And the word team is so important, because it takes a team of people who work really well together to do this and to do it right. So thank you to Joanne and the rest of the academic team for the amazing work that they've done on all of this. We had one really great comment there. Somebody said, let's see if I can find it now, eagerness is more important than being a perfectionist. And I think that's very true. When you're very eager about this type of work and you're excited about it is when you produce something really, really good.
Yeah, I love that comment. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah. So any questions for Joanne? Just reading that. Thank yous, lots of thank yous.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all the comments. And if you think of any questions, anything else that you know pops into your head, join me on Facebook on Thursday. I'll be there at 1 p.m. Irish time on the ATC Facebook page. So if you think of anything that you want to ask about our writing team or anything like that, you can pop on there. And thank you for all the thank yous. They're very nice. And I have to say as well, the writing team are amazing. They're just incredible. Like the amount of work that they get through, and the enthusiasm and the fresh ideas are just brilliant. So it's great. I see a question here. Will there be more webinars? Yeah, we have 2 more webinars in the series. So next week is Nadine's webinar on
yes, next week with working with listening and reading texts in a Clil classroom. It's specifically it's part of the Clil strand, and it's for Clil teachers, but very much for language teachers too. So working on reading and listening text in the Clil classroom, or indeed in the language classroom. So we'll be looking at strategies to help learners access their subject content and to understand it better. And I'm going to share with you some of my favorite activities for teachers to help them mediate reading and listening texts for their students. So that's next Tuesday.
Sounds brilliant. Yeah, great. Sounds really good. And then the final webinar we have is on the 1st of June. And that webinar is teaching your teenage or helping your teenage learners to think critically. So, and that will be our final webinar. But if you've missed our past webinars, you can go to eltconnect.com and you will see lots of different past webinars there. And I see I have a question from Tang that has come in. Do you have differentiation for your courses? If yes, how do you implement it? So, and how do we cater to high ability and low ability learners? So I'm going to answer that in the context of our junior courses first. So the way I differentiate my materials with my junior materials is I will have a variety of different tasks, and the teacher has the freedom to decide if they're going to give harder tasks to students or keep it a little bit more simple, or they have the opportunity to split the class and either give the class an option of which tasks they take, or they can assign certain tasks to some groups and certain tasks to other groups. And a lot of it depends on the student outcome. So it depends on how the students interact with the material. We find that the higher level students, or the really enthusiastic students, can really put their all into a task and have an amazing outcome. The students who might be struggling a little can have an easier task and maybe have an easier outcome or easier expectation. But all our courses for our students are also leveled. So not only do we level them, so we have them in A1 to C1, we also split the students by age, which is really important for differentiation as well. So we use a few different things, but also we're not strict on teachers following lesson plans to the letter. We give teachers the freedom to change up a lesson plan according to the needs of the students in front of them. So that's really important as well. We're not asking teachers to follow every single task minute by minute. They should also differentiate in the classroom.
And I'll just come in there and say that on the adult courses, similarly, we have different levels. So while we follow the European framework from A1 up to C, well, not C2, more or less C1, we also have from A2, A2 plus, B1, B1 plus, B2, B2 plus. So within the levels, we can split them. But then even within any given level at standard or plus, we have different learning outcomes, intended learning outcomes for the lessons, which the teachers have, and they pass on to the students at the start of each lesson. And the students themselves can choose which learning outcome they want to try to meet that day or that week, depending on where they are at their own stage of learning. We have another question there. If we write new courses for university students, are there any differences? Are there things that we need to consider more?
The main thing that springs to my mind with university students is the development of critical thinking, because particularly in the first year of university, they have usually come out of high school where a lot of information has been provided to them, and there might have been a lot of rote learning or maybe a little bit of spoon feeding. Particularly, I mean, in the Irish school system, we're well aware that there's a gap between leaving high school and going into university. So I would say when you're writing for your university students, integrate things like critical thinking, problem solving, and other 21st century skills into the course to try and get them more learning a bit more independently and being able to be confident in their ideas and in the essays that they're writing, rather than relying on notes all the time.
Yeah, very good point. And I'd add to that that if you're writing for university students for a language program, I think in your writing team, your academic team, to have somebody coming from the subject or the content side of things, in a Clil context, so that you have that academic subject or content input into the materials and tasks too.
Great.
The next question then, would it be possible to have some information about the creative writing for teens? Shall I send an email to you?
Absolutely, yes. So if you email info@atcireland.ie, and you can put FAO Joanne put my name in the subject title, and I can send you all the information about the creative writing course. We taught one at Easter, and it was really successful. It's a really lovely course. It's specifically for students with a higher level of English, or native speakers or bilingual speakers, but we find the students get loads out of it. So definitely email me. Great. It's so good to see so many questions. Is there another? I think there might be another that's come in if I scroll down.
No,
Oh, there, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It's great to have so many questions come in and to have so many people engaged in this webinar.
Brilliant, yeah.
Great. Okay, so thank you so much to everyone for tuning in today, and hopefully I'll see you on Thursday on Facebook. Don't forget to register for future webinars on ELT Connect. Thank you to Nadine for moderating today and also for heading up all the writing projects that we've had over the past year. And hopefully we will see you all next week.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.